Okay. Sort of disappearing into the ether. Welcome to Space Citizens. Welcome to Space Citizens. Welcome, Space Citizen. Welcome to Space Citizens. I'm Cassandra Steer, and this is a podcast that I am launching to talk about the notion of space citizenship. I have a newsletter that's called Space Citizens, which comes out every 2 weeks, which hopefully you've found or discovered, or if not, I invite you to check it out. That's where I give a candid opinion on the latest goings on in the global space sector, space governance, space policy, space law, space security, and where I'm also exploring the ideas of what space citizenship is. I also am working on a book, which I hope to launch in 2026. And all of it builds on a body of work that I've been developing in the background of all of my work as a space lawyer in the last 10 years or so. So this podcast is an invitation to become a space citizen. And by that, I don't mean someone who's all excited about space exploration or wants to become an astronaut. That's absolutely fine if that's your jam. It's not really the focus of what I mean by space citizenship. We're in space already. We use space. You've already used space at least 20 times today. We depend on space. We're impacting space. And so we all have a vested interest in the good governance of space, of this natural environment, which the Earth already occupies. And we have a vested interest in its good governance now, today, and also for future generations. It's an intergenerational lens. Basically, we all need to give more of a shit. So at least 20 times today, possibly up to 40 times today, you've used space, probably without even thinking about it. If you've checked the weather today, that's weather satellites. If you have used GPS to figure out how to get somewhere or to order some kind of delivery online, or even just to check if your favorite restaurant or cafe is open, or to figure out the traffic, that's using satellites. Some of your phone connections are satellite-based. Some of your internet connections are satellite-based. Anything that you've had delivered to your door is using satellites. Global shipping and global transport dependent on satellites. Maritime navigation and maritime awareness, protection of fisheries, observation of our planet, of the Earth, of the quality of water that we drink, of sea ice melts, monitoring climate change. Agriculture and food security. Farmers use satellites for their automated farming equipment to plan their irrigation and their sowing so that they can be not only economically competitive, but also climate resistant. Mining, oil and gas prospecting, but also tracking the emissions of methane. Civil aviation, every time you sit in an airplane. Some traffic light systems dependent on satellites. And modern militaries can do very little without space. Satellites are their eyes, their ears, their ability to communicate, navigate, track the movement of their own troops and those of adversaries, deploy certain weapons, and their ability to compromise each other happens a lot in space. So it is a critical domain, a technological domain, but it's also part of our natural environment. I was very inspired when I first came across Frank White's work on the overview effect, the notion that astronauts who he interviewed from a range of different backgrounds, nationalities, religions, all came back from their experiences in space completely transformed by the experience of being able to look down on our planet. Most of them came back committed environmentalists. Some of them, even the most stoic scientists, described a highly spiritual experience, a connectedness, a sense of oneness with our whole planet and the vulnerability of our planet. In Frank White's book and also in a short documentary, which I really reckon you should check out, it's about 20 minutes. You can find it on YouTube and it's called The Overview Effect. In both of those, Frank White makes the argument that the more people have access to this overview experience, this overview effect, the more it's going to change how humanity thinks about our planet. We'll become planetary citizens. I guess the advantage today is that there are likely to be more people who can access that higher perspective over the planet in the coming decades. But even before then, and even if that doesn't interest you, or if you have questions about the environmental footprint of space tourism, we have access to that perspective already with breathtaking Earth observation images that are available all over the internet. There's, in fact, a camera on the International Space Station, which is orbiting the Earth at about 150 kilometers. So it orbits the Earth every 90 minutes and it goes in a sort of spiral around the planet. So it covers the entire planet. And you can watch a live stream from the International Space Station and gain that overview perspective of our planet. And this is what space citizenship is about. When I talk about enlarging our cognitive awareness, it really is about not only looking down on the planet, but also identifying as living on a planet that is in space. Our daily lives depend on the technologies we've put on in space, and it's part of our natural environment. I think it really struck me. I must have just read the book recently when I was flying over the Rockies on the west coast of Canada. And I was looking out the airplane window down at these incredible mountain peaks that just went on and on and on. And I had just flown from Australia, where when you fly over swathes of desert and of incredible lush mountain on the east coast of Australia, you just get a sense of the vastness of that country. And then you spend about 12 hours flying over ocean nonstop, and then you hit the Rockies. It really struck me, these perspectives I was getting looking down at these really vastly different, impressive parts of our planet. And I guess because I've had the privilege of living and working in various different countries at different times throughout my life and experiencing world events from a different geopolitical and geographical perspective, I guess that really got me thinking about our place on the planet determines a lot about how we identify. Our identity is made up partly of the country we're born in, partly of the country that we live in. For some people, it's very regional. And I think that's really shifting as we find ourselves entering the Asian century. We have entered the American unipolar leadership. We've entered an entirely different, uncertain, unstable, but shifting into a new stability reality. What does that mean about our sense of identity? Is it going to be determined by where we find ourselves on the planet? Or could we be, as we also explore really challenging technologies, could we be capable of stepping into a deliberate consciousness raising, a deliberate identity enlargement, which sees us as identifying with each other as citizens of a shared planet where we're going to have to deal with the mass impacts of climate change and different needs around water and food, where technology has been changing warfare already a lot in recent decades. I mean, it has for centuries, but it's been speeding up in recent decades, and that's going to have new impacts again in years to come. There's an opportunity for us to be thinking in a much more cognitively, perhaps spiritually mature way. And so the notion of space citizenship is really asking us to step up and to link what's going on in space with what's going on Earth, because the two are a mirror of each other. The two need each other. In fact, I should stop saying the two. My whole point is it's just one larger sphere of awareness. We need space to solve what's going on Earth, and we are impacting space with what we're doing from Earth. What do we think about that? Are we just going to leave that in the hands of big competing powers or single individuals who happen to control most of the world's wealth? Or are we going to participate in what happens next? That's the invitation. If we want even the kids who are Gen Alpha, who are children today, to be able to continue to access and benefit from the technologies that are space-based, let alone if we want that to continue for generations to come, we have to start doing things a little differently. And I think we all have a vested interest in that. So, this podcast is a way to explore those ideas. Sometimes it's going to be me flying solo, like right now. Mostly, it's going to be me interviewing people because there are so many people around the world doing fascinating work at the intersection of various different technologies in space or from space or dependent on space and policy and governance issues. Sometimes it'll be people who work on adjacent issues who may not necessarily think about space in their everyday work. And sometimes it'll be friends or colleagues or people I've met who really don't think much about space at all, but who work on issues that I think are very similar, like youth activism or what it is to be a citizen in today's geopolitical reality. So, it really is an exploration of both the notion of citizen and also what it is to be a space citizen. Sometimes it'll just be me on a rant because there's something in the news that really bothers me. But the point here is that it's not about off-world exploration or us becoming an off-world species. In some ways, I actually think that's a bit of a distraction. I know that some people are super excited about the next steps of human space exploration, human space flight, space tourism, that we might see humanity returning to the moon in the next couple of years. And there are some people super excited about living in space stations and eventually perhaps inhabiting Mars or other planets. That doesn't really excite me. It doesn't mean I won't be talking about it because obviously, again, these issues intersect with our impact on the space environment and our dependency on it and where we're going. What are the values that we're taking with us as we do probably inevitably start to step off our planet? But really what I'm interested in is our near Earth environment. That includes up to the moon. So the cislunar environment. Cislunar is basically everything between your feet and the moon. I'm interested in the different players. I'm interested in the geopolitics. And yes, it has been pointed out to me that we can't really say geopolitics if we're talking about what's going on in space instead of on the planet. But I'm not really into the idea of calling it astropolitics because to me that sounds like it's something different. And it's not. Space is just another domain where geopolitics are playing out. And that includes different types of actors. So, not just the key competing greater powers or rising powers. It absolutely includes middle powers and smaller nations. It also includes commercial actors who are 100% part of today's geopolitics. And it includes civil society. It includes youth activists. It includes you and I, because that is what the geopolitical reality is as of 2025 and beyond, as we enter the second quarter of this 21st century. Absolutely, it's going to include discussions about AI, and the potential for where AI is taking current technologies and might speed up the timelines of some of our current space governance and policy challenges. It's not really about the billionaires, but I will absolutely be discussing the billionaires and why it is that they think space is their playground and why it is that we all seem to hate this so much. In fact, there's probably going to be a couple of rants about that very topic, particularly as a lot of reactions to billionaires using space as a playground seems to be, why are we pouring so much money and resources, even private money, into exploring space when we have all these problems on Earth to solve? The whole point is space and space technologies are absolutely some of the most important keys to us solving Earth's wicked problems. Satellites give us the data and connectivity that we need to face today's issues around climate change, food security, mass migration, where AI is taking us, and all of the wicked problems that cause a lot of anxiety for a lot of us. So, what I'm not trying to do is add another series of issues or another physical domain to that list of things that give you anxiety when you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. What? That's never happened to me. What I want to do is increase awareness about our dependencies on space, about who's playing in space, what the pressures are, what the opportunities are, so that we can push towards better solutions for what is happening right now and for where that can take us in the immediate and near future. I'm on a mission to increase space literacy across the wider public and certainly amongst decision makers within government, within militaries, policymakers, lawmakers, those who decide where investment goes, because I'm convinced that space activities, space technologies, and our presence in space and our impact on space are a huge part of our geopolitical reality in the 21st century. And I think there just needs to be greater awareness of that. This podcast is going to be a little rough around the edges because for the time being, I'm producing it myself and I am not a podcast producer by profession. I have hosted and co-hosted several podcasts until now, but if you happen to know someone who is studying or a recent graduate of sound production who would love to do an internship, please put them in contact with me so we can make this sound awesome. But really, I'm just excited to be launching the Space Citizens podcast so that I can be in conversation with you on a regular basis about the things that I think really matter to raise that space literacy, to raise that awareness, and to encourage you to enlarge that cognitive awareness, that cognitive identity that you have to include near-Earth space. Because I think it impacts your life already. It impacts your neighbors, your colleagues, and your family's lives. If you're a parent, it already impacts your children's lives and is absolutely going to have an even bigger impact on their lives in the coming years and the next generations. This stuff matters. Space matters. And I really look forward to exploring what it is to be a space citizen with all of the people that I already have lined up to speak with me on this podcast and with you. So with that, enjoy.